Okay, this should not be a long video. Donald Trump was finally convicted. He is now a felon, 34 counts of felonious activity. Already right now, they're doing a lot to spread misinformation about this thing so that people don't actually hold him accountable. I'm going to give you some examples of that. For one, people are already saying things like, I mean, all he did was sign NDAs. NDAs are completely illegal. That's a complete obfuscation. No one's questioning whether or not NDAs are illegal. The thing that he violated was falsification of business records. You can do NDAs, but when you go and you give the money to your lawyer and say, hey, this is just lawyer fees, but in reality, this is hush money. Now at this point, that's false business records, because you have to keep accounting, right? You have to keep account of everything that you spend money on, like when you're doing a business. And of course, if you're saying, hey, no, this is just for lawyer fees, just maintaining him as lawyer, but in reality, you're giving it to your lawyer who is then giving it to another person to like keep them quiet for your campaign, then that's no longer just lawyer fees. So that's what he got, 34 counts of that. Now, this is normally a misdemeanor, but of course, in New York, in order for it to be a felony, there has to be another underlying cause for it to be a felony. So in this case, so a bunch of people are saying, well, it must be a federal case then. I heard some people saying that nonsense. No, it's a state level charge. There has to be an underlying crime that someone is covering up. I'm going to read this to you so you can understand the law, so you can understand exactly what the freak happened. Okay. Under New York law, falsification of business records is a crime when the records are altered with an intent to defraud. To be charged as a felony, prosecutors must also show that the offenders intended to commit another crime or aid or conceal another crime when falsifying records. This is where the campaign thing happened, right? Because if they believe that he was illegally using campaign funds to do this, then that's why it would be a felony. It's a crime regardless. No matter what, at the very least, he committed a misdemeanor. Whether or not it should be a felony is the only thing that I can say could be questioned, because I believe at some point then they were trying to charge him with like campaign fraud, but the FEC refused to accept that. Now, I didn't look enough into that to be able to say for sure whether they should have done that or not, but that's the underlying crime most likely, is that it was something involving campaign fraud. That still leaves it at the state level, because people were saying, well, if it's campaign, then it should be federal. You can be caught for campaign fraud at the state and federal level. And if you were doing something at the federal level, it doesn't change the fact that the state still can charge you, because the thing that you're doing is a state crime. Right? Falsification of business records is something that the state can charge you for. Now, the crime you could have been covering, right, or you could have been aiding or concealing, that could have been a federal crime. That doesn't matter. As long as you were doing another crime, then it's now a felony. So all the people that are making the stupid statement, well, this should have been a federal crime and this is really a federal thing. It's not. It's a state level crime. Falsification of business records. People started like talking about, oh, the judge should have given written instructions. And there's a reason why they don't. I think there was a 1987 case that got ran up the ladder, and the Supreme Court eventually ruled that, hey, if the written instructions have any kind of error whatsoever, then it's not considered harmless and they will overturn the case. So as a result of this, very often judges don't, in the state of New York, give written instructions to the jury. That doesn't change anything. Like, the fact of the matter is, they know what the freak that they're supposed to do. There was one specific nuance, right? When the judge really clearly explained it. The judge explained to them that a person is guilty from multiple different reasons. If the person is the single actor in a crime, then that person is guilty. If the person worked in concert with another person and that person did the crime, then they are still guilty. Let me give you an example of this. If Trump literally physically wrote down the business records and they were false, then at that point Trump would be guilty. However, if Trump didn't physically do it himself, but then he was like transferring money and then telling the other person, okay, so now you're going to label this as this, and so on and so forth, and working with that person, then he would still be guilty. So when the judge was saying to the jury, you don't have to all agree on exactly what happened. In other words, you don't have to agree that Trump physically wrote the things or that Trump worked in concert, right? Or Trump just concealed what had already been done, right? All that you have to know is that if he is guilty, which can involve any of these three different options, then at that point he's guilty, right? So you can say, I think he's guilty because he worked with the guy. Another one can say, I think he's guilty because he physically wrote the thing. Or another person can say, I think he's guilty because he just hid that the guy did those things. All three of those things would still be guilty. And it would still result in, the misdemeanor or a felony if it's, covering up another crime or concealing another crime. This wasn't a miscommunication. It wasn't like leaving it nebulous and all of those things. I heard someone making that statement. I thought that was absolutely absurd. Another talking point where people are believing that this is some sort of way going to impact negatively Donald Trump's campaign. I don't think that's the case. There were polls done, and Trump was up 6 points from the conviction. 6 points. Already to date, since this conviction, this is only 2 days later. I don't know when you guys will get the video, but this is only 2 days later. Trump raised $52 million already, right? They don't see him as a pariah. They don't see this as a stain. They really just see it as like, okay, he's a martyr and people are just out to get him. And I think at this point, it sucks because, yes, there's a part of me that wanted to believe that, yes, Trump getting convicted meant something powerful. It meant like, oh, wow, this is going to be a big deal. It's not. And then it starts bringing into focus certain things. Like, for example, being a felon, there's plenty of states where just being a felon, you can't vote. You can't own a gun. Trump, being a felon, would be able to have access to nuclear codes and, of course, be the president that the other felons can't vote for. You understand the absurdity of that? And it made me start realizing that the actual problem is that they don't dislike felons as much as they dislike black people. There was a big study that was done in Arizona, I want to say in 2012, and they were just trying to determine the impact of a felony on job applications. And so they paired up different people, black man, white man, black female, white female, so on and so forth. And they were doing these tests. I mean, a really rigorous test. I think they did 6,000 different job applications to figure out how these felonies affected the different races and sexes respectively. What they ended up determining was that black felons got penalized way worse than white felons, right? Both male and female. Male felons got penalized worse than female felons. But here's the most insane thing that they found. White felons did better than black people with no criminal record. So a white person getting a felony is less of a detriment to them than being black. It's not that they hate felons, they hate us. Because when you start looking at it, I was reading these very delicious threads, on Twitter. But there was a woman and she was complaining about the fact that, hey, this is really crazy what they're doing to these January 6ers because I got people, my fiance, he was in prison, and while he was in prison, it was on lockdown because there was gang activity. It was 48 hours. Man, the food is terrible. And then someone responded, it was like, the same thing is happening here to my husband or whatever. And she was describing, and she said, yeah, it's 96 degrees and they're on lockdown and they don't even have laundry, so they're having to wash the sink, wash their clothes in the sink. And he said that the food was inedible and he felt like he was in a concentration camp. And someone responded like, my God, or God bless, this is crazy, this is inhumane. And I'm not gonna lie, it felt good to read that because for years we've been complaining about prison reform. They've never cared about prison reform or any of the atrocities. They only care once it's happening to them.
Oh, damn. Now I see it. Now I see it.
So when we've been saying it's inhumane to charge people exorbitant fees to be able to stay in contact with their families, to charge money, to put money in their books, to pay them 26 cents an hour. When we're saying all of these things are inhumane, you didn't care. But now that it's happening to your fiance, now you got some complaints about it. So of course I responded to her and told her to choose better, so she blocked me. There's so many examples of this where you can just start to see the hypocrisy of these people. You see, they're the law and order people. Remember, law and order is what they care about. So why is it law and order until Ashley Babbitt is being told by the law, right, the police officer, do not come in this building, and she decides, I'm gonna go in this building anyway, and then gets shot in the face. At that point, there should be well, dang, she really was directly defying. No, she's a martyr and a hero. You care about law and order until at any point you feel like, your privilege should be able to supersede that.
What did you... Wait a minute. I'm white.
Again, I'm not the biggest fan of Obama, but do you remember them going ham over Obama wearing a tan suit?
What's upsetting is that it just showed him relaxed. It just showed him that he was on vacation. People are dying.
So it reinforced the wrong image.
Oh, it was a nightmare.
Obama wore a tan suit and they wouldn't stop talking about it. There's compilations of that. What about when he used Dijon mustard? All of a sudden it's like, yo, what is this Dijon?
Gateway pundit blog pointed out that plain old ketchup, well, it didn't quite cut it for the president. Now take a look at him ordering his burger.
Then, of course, one of my favorites was when they started complaining and they said, hey, Obama is inexperienced. He shouldn't be the president because he has no experience. The man had held public office. And then Trump got in there, they were like, no, he's smart. He's been doing business before. He's good. It's hypocrisy. Same way when they said,
will we allow the people to continue deciding who will nominate the next justice? Or will we empower a lame duck president to make that decision on his way out the door? Presidents have a right to nominate, just as the Senate has its constitutional right to provide or withhold consent. In this case, the Senate will withhold it.
The hypocrisy is real. The fact of the matter is, at this point, I believe that the Democrats truly believed that by giving him this felony and things like that, that it would maybe awaken some people into who Donald Trump is, and maybe that it might like scare some people off. They're doing everything that they can. In reality, I think the best course of action would have been to give us policies that actually mattered, right? To actually do the things that you promised that you would do. You know, having black people's back and all of that. They're going to start doing the thing now. I guarantee you the appeals are going to start coming. One more thing. You know that it's not really the atrocity that they hate, but the way that you know how much they hate us, and some more evidence of this insane hypocrisy. Do y'all remember in Ukraine when Russia was invading and all those Ukrainians were leaving, and you have all those newscasters saying,
you know, this is a relatively civilized, relatively European.
And this is not a developing third world nation. This is Europe.
Quite frankly, these are Christians, they're white, they're very similar to many people who live in...
These are white people. They were taken aback because of their race. And these are the same people that will say, I believe in a colorblind society. We should just address poverty. We can't address the actual issues. It's nonsense. It's hypocrisy. It's disgusting. This is not what's going to defeat Trump. Trump is gaining votes among black people. Now, people get upset when you say that's because of misinformation. I can't imagine an informed black person that's willing to support Donald Trump. You got people like Waka Flocka, Trump 2024. What is freaking going on? We gotta wake the freak up. You can despise Biden and not like Donald Trump. You know that, right? We gotta do better.